Hello and welcome to another episode of 8-Bit Keys. Today I'm going to be showing off Ben Heck's Atari Junk Keyboard. This sucker is surprisingly big and heavy, but it's probably the most unique device I'll probably ever have on this show. In fact, it is a one-of-a-kind keyboard. If you're not familiar with the story behind it, let me show you.
We could build an Atari Junk Keyboard.
Oh, and we could be cool piano players like Ben Folds.
Oh, yeah. I'll get it wired up and we can take a look. Let's take a look at the scope. All right, we're gonna look at the third counter on the column. There it is. Now we're gonna look at the third counter on the switches. Aha! Okay, we have a slight delay.
But the thing is, per each octave, we're gonna have one set of 555 timers, and each octave there can only be, it's not gonna be polyphonic in between, within the octaves. So for example, I push this button, I push that one, but if I press them together, it's like a third note. But then if you add another one, it's, between the octaves there will be polyphony.
And then each of the 4 octaves has an effect potentiometer, and that's what Felix is working with his right hand. So I think we should continue wiring it in this fashion. Okay, status report, where are we?
Of interfaces for the keyboard matrix going into here and connected to the potentiometers, but now I've got 2 more that are on here. I need to wire them up, and then I have to make a 4th one as well.
Okay, so first off, a little introduction to how this thing works. These 4 sets of potentiometers roughly correspond to these 4 octaves on the keyboard so that you can tune each and every key. I say roughly because there are a few exceptions. The first thing I needed to do was label all of the potentiometers so I would know which keys they correspond to. Okay, so far these have all been more or less in order, matching up with the keys. So, you know, we have D sharp, and then E, and then F, so on. But when we get over here to this guy, it actually controls this one. So they're a bit crisscrossed. I finished labeling them, but I kept finding mistakes, so I eventually came back and relabeled the whole thing with a piece of masking tape. Then I started the laborious process of tuning each and every note using an app on my iPhone to help with that. The lower notes were not hard, but the higher notes were quite challenging because there wasn't as much fine adjustment. The extreme upper notes proved to be impossible because the slightest touch of the knob would skip several notes, or in some cases an entire octave. But I think I finally got it tuned, and here's a chromatic scale. So here's an interesting phenomenon about this keyboard. If you push D, you get a D. If you push E, you get an E. What happens if you push them together? What note is that? It's actually E flat of a higher octave. Same thing here. If you push F and G, so these 4 knobs down here adjust the effects for each of these 4 sections on the keyboard. The effects are hard to explain. If you turn the knob partway, it changes the modulation sound of the pulse wave. But if you turn it far enough, it actually changes between 3 or 4 different octaves. I should also mention that the keyboard is not polyphonic, at least not exactly. You can play multiple notes, but they have to be spaced out in the 4 different sections of the keyboard. So you could play up to 4 notes at a time, but they have to be in separate quadrants. So I put together a little 3-track performance, so take a listen. Well, are you upset I didn't record more? Well, so am I. You see, it's actually a miracle that I got the recording that I did. I was really just playing around at that point. I didn't even have my overhead camera going. In fact, during this stage of experimentation, I often don't have a camera going at all. I'm just recording the audio. I just happen to be recording the video this time, but here's the problem. The keyboard broke on me. So a few of the keys just quit working completely, and then some of the other keys would just stick on. It's like you'd push them, and they would just continue making a note forever and ever and ever until I unplugged it. And so I just kind of stopped at that point. Now, that was yesterday. What's interesting is today, it's actually working again. All the keys are working, but watch this when I try to play like some scales. You see, it's completely out of tune again. I don't know how that could have happened. I haven't touched any of the potentiometers overnight. So that's kind of strange. It's almost like the behavior of it changes when it heats up or something like that. Maybe the capacitance changes on the capacitor or something. I don't know. But anyway, it's a really cool concept. I'm glad that Ben built this, because even though this one's kind of a failure to some extent, it's a very interesting proof of concept. It shows that you can, in fact, build your own keyboard using all discrete components without any microprocessors or sound synthesizer chips or anything like that.
Felix, the Atari junk keyboard died.
Bummer.
I wonder if the circuit boards that were put together with headers, if they came loose in shipping.
That's possible.
Because I didn't pack the inside of it, so it could have been like clunk, 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 and the inertia could have made them pull loose. And he also mentioned the polyphony, or the lack thereof, and we did actually start off thinking about making every key its own thing, but that would have taken a lot more soldering and wiring.
And we didn't have enough parts to do it.
Right, or the time. But we thought about it. So our, we don't need it good, we need it Wednesday solution was to just make each octave its own thing. But it was fun, because where did you find that keyboard? That's where the project kind of came before. You came in one day and you're like, hey, I've got this keyboard, Ben.
Yeah, it was parts that were being thrown away from a music store.
Well, even if the keyboard is broken beyond repair, I'm glad that he was able to do a really nice demo of it before it died.
Yeah.
Of course, we're always really superstitious on our show. We think that, well, we don't think. It's just the truth. Like, when you run the camera, things break.
Yeah, everything's good.
It'll be working perfectly fine, and as soon as you turn on the camera, some sort of gamma ray comes out of it.
And, I understand Ben was on a tight time schedule to make this, but if this were something you did want to make and you were going to spend the time on it, I'm sure you could come up with a much better design that would, probably give full polyphony, be a little bit more reliable, maybe replace these potentiometers with resistors that are set, so that it's always in tune. So, there's just some ideas, but you could certainly use 555 timers to build a keyboard and make something better than this. So it's definitely a neat proof of concept.
So anyway, we'd like to offer another big thanks to the 8-Bit Guy for taking the time to get the keyboard working better than we were able to.
Right on, it was awesome.
And we're sorry that it died.
Well, I hope you found this episode entertaining. Thanks again to Ben Heck for sending this to me, and stick around as I've got more coming.